There was a time when humanity did not see dreams as fiction. Long before the noise of the modern world drowned out the whispers of the soul, dreams were the sacred river that connected this life with the next. They were not random images of the mind. They were messages carved into the invisible fabric of reality, delivered in silence to those who knew how to listen. To dream was to travel. To dream was to see. To dream was to remember. Every ancient civilization knew this truth. It pulsed in their temples. It echoed in their myths. It shaped the very architecture of their sacred places. In ancient Egypt, dreams were considered portals between the world of the living and the world of the gods. The priests of the temple did not sleep as we sleep now. They entered sleep as one enters a sacred ritual. Before closing their eyes, they would purify their bodies in sacred waters. They would burn resins that filled the chamber with thick, sweet-smelling smoke, creating a boundary between worlds. Their dreams were not forgotten fragments, they were reports, visions from beyond, delivered by Neteru, the forces of cosmic order. They believed that Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, recorded every dream of every soul. Not one was lost. Dreams were part of the soul's eternal journey and could reveal forgotten knowledge from past lives, messages from ancestors, or even warnings from the gods. But Egypt was not alone. In Sumer, the most ancient civilization known to history, dreams were sent by the gods themselves. The god Enki was the master of waters, wisdom, and dreams. He could send visions into the minds of kings and priests, altering the course of history in a single night. Dreams were the language of divinity, and to understand them was to touch the source of creation itself. Among the shamans of the far north and the tribes of the Amazon, sleep was never sleep, it was flight. The soul, unbound by the weight of flesh, could travel across vast landscapes of spirit-meeting guides, facing demons, receiving healing. They crafted dream catchers not as mere decoration but as energetic filters, designed to catch malevolent forces while allowing true visions to pass through. In Greece, entire temples were built for the sole purpose of dream incubation. The temple of Asclepius was not just a place of healing, it was a place of dreaming. Pilgrims would travel for weeks to reach these sanctuaries. Upon arrival, they would fast, purify themselves, and sleep within the temple walls, seeking a dream that would reveal the cure for their suffering. The ancients knew that sleep was never unconsciousness, it was a gateway, a space between life and death, a place where the soul remembered who it truly was, free from the chains of time, language, and identity. But in our world, this knowledge has been buried. We now treat dreams as accidents of the mind, chaotic, fragmented, meaningless. We wake up and immediately forget. The art of dreaming, real dreaming, has become the lost language of the soul. And yet, fragments of this ancient world still remain. Symbols appear across cultures: the serpent devouring its tail, the spiral staircase rising into darkness, the door half open in an endless corridor. Echoes from forgotten temples still ripple beneath the surface of our sleep. For those who remember, for those who feel that tug deep within the chest at the edge of waking, the path still waits. We were never meant to forget. Dreams were never meant to vanish. They wait for us patiently like an ancient forest just beyond the veil of thought, silent, eternal, watching, waiting for us to return. The ancient world did not separate science from spirit. What we now call mystical they saw as measurable not through instruments of metal, but through instruments of the soul. And among the most refined sciences of the ancients was the art of dreaming not as a passive experience, but as a trained, cultivated technology. Dreaming was a skill, a sacred science, a gateway that only opened for those who knew the keys. Initiates of the old temples were taught from a young age how to prepare the mind for sleep, not to lose themselves in forgetfulness, but to enter the dream with awareness. They learned how to still the waves of waking thought, to silence the inner dialogue, to calm the body until it became a vessel of still water, ready to reflect the stars. Before sleep, sacred rituals were performed. Special herbs and resins were burned not simply for aroma, but for their power to alter the energy of a space. Frankincense, myrrh, blue lotus, these were not luxuries, they were tools. Each had a frequency, each opened a different layer of the dream world. Some initiates drank infusions made from dream-enhancing plants, mugwort, Camellia zacatecchi, Silene capensis herbs known to the shamans of Africa and the Americas for their ability to thin the veil. Not for intoxication, but for access, the boundary between the waking and the unseen became thinner, more transparent. The dream was no longer distant, it was here. They also practiced specific bodily positions for sleep. The posture of the dreamer mattered. Some cultures taught that sleeping on the left side opened the body to intuitive visions, while others believed that the spine must be aligned with the Earth's magnetic field to receive messages from the stars. But beyond herbs and postures, there was training of consciousness. The dreamer was taught to recognize the symbols of the inner world, to see through the illusion, and remember they were dreaming. This was not modern lucid dreaming in the casual sense. This was a sacred rite, an intentional crossing of the threshold between worlds. In ancient Tibet, this practice was known as Milam, the yoga of the dream. Initiates trained to become fully conscious within their dreams, using them not for pleasure or escape, but for liberation. They faced their fears, merged with archetypes, dissolved karmic impressions. The dream was not fantasy, it was the mirror of the soul, purified and intensified. Some schools taught that the soul left the body during sleep. This wasn't metaphor, they meant it literally. The body became a vessel still, and guarded while the soul roamed the subtle planes. This is why protections were used during sleep. Amulets beneath the pillow, inscriptions around the room, sigils drawn in ash or chalk at the room's corners. Not for superstition, but for survival in the invisible realms. And there were tools. Ancient dreamers used objects that modern minds would dismiss as mere art-carved bones, crystal spheres, anointed stones. Each served a purpose. Crystals were aligned to the geometry of consciousness, placed at the head or heart of the sleeping body. The most powerful among them, like lapis lazuli or obsidian, were considered conduits between planes. Even the bed itself mattered. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, beds used for sacred sleep were made from specific woods, aligned to specific constellations. In some temples, the initiate slept not alone, but beneath painted ceilings of stars and ancient technology designed to remind the soul of where it came from. Dreaming was not escape, it was exploration. And the greatest explorers were those who remembered their way back. They kept dream journals not with ink, but encoded symbols and sacred script, because dreams were dangerous when misused. Their meanings could be misinterpreted by the uninitiated, just as a mathematical formula means nothing to one who has not studied its language. In these schools, a dream was not just a dream, it was a coded message, a spiritual diagnostic, a vision from beyond time. Some dreams were personal, others were collective. Some came from the soul, others from beings beyond comprehension. But all had meaning. The ancients knew to ignore a dream was to refuse a letter from the divine. To awaken without reflection was to close a sacred door. We, in the modern age, have left these teachings behind. We slip into unconsciousness surrounded by artificial light, flickering screens, synthetic noise, and we wonder why our dreams have faded. But the ancient science of dreaming is not lost. It waits, beneath the surface of silence, beneath the skin of forgetting. And for those who begin to remember, the gate will open again. Long before hospitals and clinics, before modern therapy or even written scripture, the ancients turned to something far older, the Temple of Dreams, not built for worship, not for sacrifice. These were places constructed with a singular purpose, to enter sacred sleep and receive messages from the divine. This practice was known as dream incubation, the intentional act of sleeping within a sacred space to receive visions, healing, or prophecy. But to call it sleep is almost misleading. It was a ritual of entrance, a crossing of thresholds, and the temples where this took place were carefully, even mathematically, designed for this purpose. Let us begin in ancient Greece, where the most famous of these sites stood the temples of Asclepius, god of healing. Pilgrims traveled for days, sometimes weeks, enduring hunger, heat, and hardship just to reach these stone sanctuaries. But they did not come to be healed by hand or herb, they came to dream. Upon arrival, the initiate would undergo a process of purification, baths in cold, mineral-rich waters, fasting to cleanse the inner world, offerings of honey, incense, and prayer. The physical body had to be emptied so the soul could speak more clearly. Then came the descent. Quite literally, most dream temples were built with underground chambers, sanctified corridors that spiraled downward into the earth. This wasn't merely architecture, it was psychology. The initiate was symbolically moving into the womb of the world, the underworld of their own subconscious, into the realm of dream. These chambers were dark, cool, silent, devoid of distraction, and at the center a stone bed or slab, smooth, ancient, often placed beneath murals of stars or sacred animals. The dreamer would lie here, surrounded by symbols of healing, rebirth, and divine presence. Snakes sacred to Asclepius would often slither freely through the chamber, not feared, but revered. They were symbols of life force, renewal, and direct messengers of the god. As sleep took over, the initiate would enter what they believed was not just a dream, but a meeting with the divine. In these visions, Asclepius himself might appear, or a priestess, or a serpent. And within the symbolism of the dream, a message would come, the cure, the answer, the next step on their path. When they awoke, they would share the dream with temple priests, not just interpreters, but trained oracles who understood the symbolic language of the subconscious. Sometimes the dream would reveal a physical cure, a plant, a ritual, an act of release. Other times, the healing would come simply from the dream itself, the encounter, the realization, the divine contact. But it wasn't only Greece. In Egypt, dream temples were far older. Known as the Houses of Life, these sanctuaries were run by high priests trained in dream magic, astrology, and the invocation of Neteru, the divine archetypes. Here, too, the initiate would fast, purify, and descend. Special oils would be applied to the body. Sacred hymns would be whispered as the dreamer drifted. The temple itself acted as a kind of amplifier, its geometry designed to conduct and focus the subtle energy of the soul. Even the stone used in construction was chosen for its energetic resonance. In these places, to dream was to receive a sacred commission. Rulers would sleep within them to decide matters of state. Prophets would emerge with visions of coming cataclysms. Children would be brought to dream temples to receive names believed to be revealed by higher intelligences in the dream world. In the oracle temples of Mesopotamia, the ritual was even more secretive. Veiled in silence, guarded by the priesthood, dream incubation was considered a high ritual, sometimes even too dangerous for the uninitiated. Some dreams were not meant to be touched. The deeper you went, the more layers of the self you shed until you met something ancient, something eternal. Across the ancient world, from the dream caves of the Celts to the night temples of the Near East, sleep was never passive. It was sacred. The temple was a portal, a receiver, a laboratory of the invisible. But perhaps most remarkable is this: these temples were not only external. The initiate was trained to carry the temple within, to make the body itself a sanctuary for dream contact, to recreate the sacred conditions, silence, intention, openness, anywhere. Because the true temple was not of stone, it was the space between breaths, the moment between thought and sleep, the silence in which the soul could speak. We no longer build temples for dreaming. We no longer fast before sleep. We do not anoint ourselves with sacred oils or lie beneath ceilings of stars. And yet, the practice remains. Not in brick or in scroll, but in memory. For those who remember the ancient way, a bedroom can become a sanctuary, a bed, a slab of prophecy, and a dream, a door back to the divine. Once, long ago, humanity spoke two languages. One belonged to the waking world, the language of words, of names, of stone and earth. The other belonged to the night, the silent language of symbols, visions, and images that could pass through the soul like wind through leaves. It was this second language, the language of dreams, that the ancients guarded most fiercely, because in it was hidden something more powerful than any word, the raw essence of truth. But this language was never linear. It did not obey the rules of grammar or time. It spoke in spirals, in mirrors, in echoes. To learn it was not to memorize it, was to remember what the soul already knew. Every dream carried a message, but it was never handed to you directly. It was wrapped in image, disguised in metaphor, clothed in illusion. The ancients believed that this was intentional, a sacred protection. The deeper the symbol, the more powerful the truth it concealed. Why? Because truth is dangerous in the hands of those who are not ready. A serpent in a dream might not be a serpent. It could be wisdom. It could be rebirth. It could be betrayal. The meaning was never fixed, it depended on the dreamer. The same symbol could mean death to one and awakening to another. That was the power and the mystery of the dream language. This is why ancient schools taught not only how to dream, but how to read dreams. They studied universal symbols, ancient glyphs that echoed across cultures, the labyrinth, the mountain, the door, the river, the mirror, the flame. These were the archetypes, the eternal shapes of consciousness that spoke across space and time. But beyond universal symbols, there was a deeper layer still, the personal dream language, the symbols unique to each soul. A child might dream of a lost toy, but the wise dreamer would see that toy as the symbol of lost innocence, of forgotten power, of a secret waiting to be reclaimed. In the temples of Egypt, priests would spend decades recording their dreams, not in words, but in pictures, sigils, and patterns. A private language of the soul. They believed that the gods spoke in symbols because only the worthy could decode them. To be initiated was not just to see dreams, it was to speak them, to carry their meaning back into the waking world and act upon them. And this language was not limited to night. Signs would appear everywhere for the initiated: a bird crossing the path, a sudden gust of wind, the pattern of shadows on a wall. Life itself was seen as an extension of the dream, a living mirror of the inner world. This is why dreams were feared by kings, by conquerors, by rulers who sought control. For a person who understood the dream language could never be fully controlled. They would read between the lines of reality. They would hear messages no law could silence. They would see beyond illusion. But then came forgetting. As cities rose and empires expanded, humanity turned outward. The inner world was left behind. Dreams were dismissed as random. Symbols were reduced to decoration. Great language of the night fell silent. And yet, it is not gone. It waits in the forgotten corners of consciousness. It lingers in childhood memories of dreams we could never quite explain. It lives in the symbols that still haunt the margins of our mind. Because dreams have their own memory. They remember us. And if you listen, really listen, you can feel it. The pulse of that ancient language, the tug in your chest when a dream leaves you breathless, the feeling that you have seen something important, something meant only for you. This is the lost language of dreams. Not lost forever, only sleeping, waiting for you to remember. There are moments in history that were never written in books, events that were never recorded on stone or parchment because they were not whispered in courts or sung in temples. They were delivered in dreams. To kings, to mystics, to wanderers sleeping beneath foreign stars. Messages from beyond time itself slipping through the cracks of ordinary reality and landing in the fragile space between sleep and waking. The ancients believed that dreams were not limited by time or space. They did not belong to the present moment. They could reach across centuries, pulling fragments of forgotten worlds, future warnings, or past memories long erased from waking minds. In Egypt, it was said that Thutmose IV became pharaoh, not because of war or bloodline, but because of a dream. As a young prince, long before he wore the crown, he fell asleep beside the great Sphinx of Giza, and in that silence beneath the stars of ancient Kem, he dreamed that the Sphinx itself spoke to him. The lion-bodied guardian promised him the throne if he cleared away the sands that buried its body. When he awoke, the message burned within him like fire. He obeyed. He unearthed the forgotten guardian, and soon after, he became king. But it was not only Egypt. In Mesopotamia, the great king Gilgamesh was haunted by dreams that foretold his battles, his losses, his journey into the underworld. These were not vague symbols, they were maps of destiny, carved into his nights like prophecies written in smoke. In Greece, dreams guided generals and shaped empires. It is told that Alexander the Great once dreamed of a satyr, a mythical being of nature, who whispered to him of a city he must take. The next day, his advisors revealed that the Greek word for Satyr was almost identical to the name of the city of Tyre, his next conquest. But these were not merely stories of kings. Ordinary people, peasants, priests, wanderers, all carried dreams that came from beyond, dreams of ancestors long dead, delivering warnings, dreams of gods unknown, bestowing gifts or visions, dreams of other lives, distant worlds that seemed impossibly real. In many shamanic traditions, dreams were not bound by the dreamer's own life. They could belong to someone else, to a past version of themselves, or even to a future yet to be lived. Dreamers would see landscapes that did not exist only to find them years later, unchanged, waiting for them in distant lands. Some would dream of catastrophic events, floods, fires, the fall of cities, only to awaken and wonder, was it memory, was it vision, or something in between? Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, there exists the concept of the dream time, not merely the past, but a sacred timeless realm where all creation stories, all ancestors, all truths reside. To dream was to touch this eternal space, to step beyond the illusion of time and feel the original pulse of the world. In ancient Tibet, the most advanced dreamers, masters of the Milam practice, claimed to receive teachings from beings not of this world, wisdom beyond words, maps of the afterlife, instructions for navigating realms of consciousness far beyond human comprehension. And in every culture, one thing was certain: some dreams were not yours. They belonged to the universe itself, to forces older than history, to spirits waiting to guide, to warn, to awaken. But not every message was beautiful. Some dreams were tests, shadows sent to challenge the dreamer to see if they could face their own fear, their own attachments, their illusions. These were not punishments, they were initiations. Because only those who faced the darkness within their dreams could awaken truly free. And even now, in the modern world, drowned in noise, surrounded by artificial light, these messages continue. A stranger in your dream with no face, a room you've never seen but feels like home, a voice that calls your name not with sound but with knowing. These are not accidents. They are echoes from beyond time, fragments of the forgotten world calling you back, reminding you of something older than memory, reminding you of who and what you truly are. Not all things are forgotten by accident. There are truths so powerful, so liberating, that they become dangerous to those who seek control. And among these forgotten truths, few are as potent as the ancient science of dreams. Once, long ago, every human being was a dreamer, not in the weak sense of fantasy or desire, but in the old way, in the sacred way. Humanity moved between worlds with ease. The waking life and the dream world were not divided by walls, they were divided by a thin veil, soft as breath. In dreams, people spoke to the dead. They healed the sick. They received wisdom that no empire could contain. They saw visions of what was coming long before it arrived. And perhaps most dangerous of all, they remembered who they were beyond this body, beyond this life. They remembered that the world they saw by day was not the only world. But power fears what it cannot control. As civilizations grew, as empires rose from blood and stone, the rulers of men began to fear the dreamers. They could not silence the dream. They could not stop the visions. But they could change the story. It began slowly. Temples of dreams were closed, converted to places of worship that no longer taught the art of inner travel. The rituals of dream incubation were labeled as superstition. The wisdom of the shamans and seers was replaced by official doctrines rigid, lifeless, bound to the waking world alone. Religions that once honored the dream world became gatekeepers, allowing visions only through approved channels. Mystical experiences were either suppressed or branded as heresy. And the language of dreams, the symbols, the sacred geometry, the universal patterns were hidden in plain sight, carved into forgotten temples, painted onto crumbling walls, preserved in myths that few could decode. Why was this done? Because a person who knows how to dream cannot be truly enslaved. A dreamer sees beyond systems, beyond rules, beyond false histories. They know that reality itself is fluid, that what seems impossible by day is natural by night. Dreaming teaches one of the oldest and most feared truths: that the true world is within, that the source of power is not external, that the universe responds not to force, but to consciousness. For kings and conquerors, for empires built on control, this was unacceptable. You cannot own a soul that remembers how to travel without a body. You cannot rule a people who speak nightly to the divine. And so, the forgetting began. Dreams were reduced to fantasy, to noise, to the subconscious garbage of the mind. Schools stopped teaching how to dream. Temples stopped guiding initiates. And slowly, generation by generation, humanity drifted into waking sleep. A world without dreamers is a world easy to control. But the knowledge was never destroyed. It was hidden. By the few who remembered, secret societies guarded fragments of dream practices. Mystical orders encoded the language of symbols into their teachings. The dream temples were buried, but not erased. Their stones still hum beneath the earth. Their symbols still wait in ancient texts. And even in modern times, the dream calls to those who are ready. It comes in childhood, before the world teaches you to forget. It comes in moments of silence, when the noise of the world fades. It comes in visions that leave you breathless, knowing, without proof, that you have touched something real. The greatest prison is not made of walls. It is made of forgetfulness. But for those who awaken, for those who remember the ancient way, the chains fall away. Because once you reclaim the power of dreams, no force on earth can truly hold you. There is a reason you are here. There is a reason these words found you in this moment, in this life. Because the ancient world is not gone. It lives beneath the surface of all things, waiting for those who still remember that sleep was never just sleep, and dreams were never just dreams. You are not lost. You are not ordinary. You are what the ancients called the dreamer. But to awaken the dreamer within is to step beyond the life you were taught to accept. It is to become a traveler between worlds. It is to remember what the world asked you to forget. The journey begins not in temples of stone or in distant lands, but within the sacred space of your own being. It begins in silence. For in the ancient schools, silence was the first door. Before symbols, before visions, before astral journeys, the dreamer learned to create silence within. Because only in silence could the voice of the dream be heard. Tonight, when the world grows quiet, when the light fades, you will stand at the threshold. You will lie down not as a prisoner of sleep, but as an initiate. Cleanse your space. Prepare it as the ancients did, not out of ritual alone, but out of respect for the unseen. Burn incense or herbs if you have them to remind the body that you are crossing into another world. Turn off the noise. Step away from the false light of machines. Leave the language of the waking world behind. You are entering the temple of the night. Before you close your eyes, speak your intention. The dream world responds to clarity. Ask to remember. Ask to see. Ask to receive what your soul is ready for. And when the dream comes, do not grasp it like a hunter. Let it come as a whisper, as a mist, as a guide. Trust its language. Trust its symbols. When you wake, do not move too quickly. The dream is fragile in the moments after waking. It lingers like morning mist. Hold still. Let it return to you. Record what you saw in words, in symbols, in anything that comes. For this is how the ancient dreamers lived. This is how they mapped the unseen, one dream at a time, one symbol at a time, until their inner world became as real and as powerful as the outer. And as you walk this path, something will begin to change. The world around you will shift, patterns will appear, synchronicities will emerge. You will begin to see the symbols of the dream in waking life. Because reality was never divided. The dream and the world are one. You will remember places you have never visited. You will feel ancient cities beneath your feet. You will know things you were never taught. And slowly, silently, the dreamer within you will awaken fully. You will not need permission. You will not need approval. Because the true initiation was never given by temples or priests. It was given by the universe itself, hidden in the forgotten chambers of your soul. This is your inheritance. This is your power. The world may try to make you forget again. It may drown you in noise. It may tell you that dreams are meaningless. But you will know the truth. Because you have seen it. You have walked the ancient path. And you have remembered who you truly are. A dreamer. An initiate. A soul that was never lost, only waiting to awaken. So now you know. The secret history of dreams is not locked away in books or buried beneath temples. It lives in you. In the stillness behind your eyes, in the visions you never told anyone about, in the dreams that felt more real than waking life. The ancients knew it, the mystics protected it, and you have remembered it. You are not here by chance. You are not just a witness. You are the dreamer the world tried to silence. But dreams cannot be erased. They cannot be caged. They are older than time and more powerful than reality. And now you walk once more among them. So tonight, when you sleep, listen, not with ears, but with soul, because the dream is calling. Welcome back, Initiate. Your journey has only just begun.